So it's that time of year where the players play hurt, and we thought that we would mimic their great athletic feats and abilities, and we would also play hurt. I am dealing with a illness I've been dealing with all week. Thankful for the miracle of antibiotics that we are here today. Hopefully my voice will hold out through the entire show. Brandon, as you can see, while generally a jolly fellow, is not generally that cherubic. There is some dental issues going on with my man. And so he is also playing through the pain. So this ought to be a fun show where if we have to call the trainers in halfway through, we'll take a TV timeout and, get the Budweiser commercial on. But we are now we are about 9 days away from Super Bowl, Big Game 50 in Northern California, the biggest sporting event of the year. And we are here at the Fanzeal Sports Generally Week in Review. But because it's a Super Bowl, we are going to be here about 4 or 5 nights next week. My history, for those of you who don't know, I've covered close to 10 Super Bowls. I think the last count was 9 Super Bowls. I have been to Radio Row as a producer, as a publicist, as a writer. I have been through the Super Bowl turbine. I have seen it all. Been in the locker room when they won and in the locker room when they lost. And I will tell you, I am just as happy sitting here in what is now my home office because it's late Friday night and I'm not in my regular office. And I will tell you, Brandon, as somebody who has been through this whole thing, I think this is a more fun way to do Super Bowl. And I know this is your first go around with Fanzeal in the Super Bowl, but I welcome you to it. We're going to have a heck of a week. There's a lot to talk about, a lot on the line for both teams, obviously well beyond victory. And I do want to start there. Peyton Manning and Cam Newton, the two quarterbacks, two former number one picks, obviously many years apart. This is Cam's first shot at real superstardom. This is Peyton's last shot. If he wins, he's definitely retiring. If he loses, I'd say the odds are still 80% that he's retiring. I think that the injuries and the way he's playing, his mind can still go, but his body cannot. Does Peyton Manning need to win this game, a lifetime 1-2 record in the Super Bowl before next week? Does Peyton Manning need to win this game to put himself back into the best ever conversation? Or have we already lost that possibility? Is that gone? I mean, obviously you've got your Brady's, your Montanas, your Bradshaw's, but his lack of ability to come through in the big game and those all those, I think it was 9 one-and-dones in the playoffs, those tarnish that record. And sure, when Peyton's stats are talked about, he'll always be at the top of the discussion. When you talk about great winners in the game, how bad does Peyton need this win?
He needs it extremely bad. In my opinion, he's not even up there with the other guys that we would consider the greatest of all time for, if we're going to call them champions.
Okay.
Because champions come through in the clutch. They come through in the big moments. Like you said, dude's had 9 one-and-dones. When you compare, if we're going to compare him to the greats, what's the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks? Okay, you got to start Montana.
Yep. Brady.
You got to throw Bradshaw in there.
Yep.
I'd want to put Marino in there.
You can't.
He doesn't have
under your rules that you just brought up. You can't put Marino in there.
No. And that's what I'm saying. That's
I think the fourth one is you're either going Unitas if you're going back to the old era, which would be totally fine, or you're going John Elway, who also, by the way, lost more than he won, but has records. Brett Favre only won 1. Aaron Rodgers has only won 1. Marino didn't win any.
To tell you the truth, I would put Brady in there before I put Elway.
Well, of course Brady's in there. Brady's number 2 on the list, if not number 1.
There are a lot of people that would argue with you, and they would say he's lost a lot. And,
he's 4-2.
He didn't win this,
he's 4-2.
Yeah.
Super Bowl.
I'm just telling you what people say.
I don't care what people say. I care what I say. And I say any top 4 quarterbacks of all time, doesn't include Tom Brady, is not a legitimate list.
Hey, I agree. I'm just saying, stupid can be heard from everywhere. So, that being said, for me, Manning has to win this game because even if he wins this game here, he's really only going to be on par with Eli. And you already know how I feel about the dude that plays quarterback in New York.
Yeah, if you folks haven't been watching us, you can go back through on our YouTube page at Fanzeal Sports And you can check just about every other weekend review we have done. Somehow the name Eli Manning gets brought up just so Brandon can talk about how terrible he is.
Yeah. I mean, the he's got the gifts, but he doesn't have the gifts. That, he's a product of gifts. That being said, Peyton's got to win if he even wants to be able to go out on a strong note. And that's at the most, that's what he's going to do. He's going to have all the regular season records, but other than that, he really doesn't have much more. Now, to me, what I see happening, and we're going to obviously get into this later when we make our predictions, but I see Peyton coming back next year. And you know where Peyton's going to be? And Peyton's going to be the quarterback of the Los Angeles Rams.
No,
you heard it here first.
And last.
You heard it here first.
And last. And I'll tell you why that's not going to happen. I'll tell you why. Because Peyton Manning.
Tell me why it won't happen. I'll tell you why it will happen.
All right. It's not going to happen for the following reason. Because Peyton Manning is not going to go to a place where the supposed amazing defense isn't that amazing and where he has no weapons. They got a great young running back, and that's it. They don't have any legitimate outside threats. They got a couple speed guys that you can't trust. So Peyton Manning, with his noodle arm, his bad neck, his injuries, is not going to go to a team starting in LA. He doesn't need to be in LA for commercial ventures. He's got all the commercials he can need, cut that meat and the nationwide and, chicken parm, it tastes so good. But he's not going to put himself in a situation to be ridiculed, even worse than he was this year. Look, he was almost benched. There was a 50-50 shot in week 16. He was benched. There was a 50-50 shot in week 16, 17. He wasn't going to play in the playoffs. They were going to hand this over to Brock Osweiler. If Brock Osweiler plays better in those last few weeks, he's the quarterback right now. So, man, you got to get comfortable over there. You're very movie around. Look at you. You're like bouncing. You got all this Super Bowl energy. I like it.
You got me thinking about Peyton, and I'm all jiggly.
He's getting geared up. So I think that's why that's not going to happen. And I'll let you get back to your whole nonsense. But I do want to bring up one thing real quickly. It's an interesting parallel, and this is obviously not a mistake, that the Denver situation, when John Elway was in his last couple of years and they were going for the Super Bowl, they beefed up the defense and they beefed up the running game. Now, they tried to replicate that this year. The defense is best in the league. They're unbelievable. The running game has had bright spots, has had down spots. It's never been as consistent. It's certainly not Terrell Davis, who, had he not been injured, is a Hall of Fame running back. So this defense can lead Peyton to a championship. John Elway doesn't get knocked for having a strong defense and a strong running game that took those two titles. Will Peyton get knocked if he wins because the defense did it?
Yes. Peyton's going to have to play out of his mind in order to win this game, because the guy just doesn't have it. Well, I've been saying for the last year, he's throwing the best looking duck that you can throw for a starting caliber NFL quarterback, but it gets there somehow. The reason why I think that Peyton is going to be starting for the Rams next year is because Brock Osweiler is going to be – oh, pardon me. I have to do this in my Paul Heyman voice. Brock Osweiler, the great Brock Osweiler, is going to be a free agent. And Denver's got to pay him because they're not going to let that dude walk. If you got to choose between Peyton and Osweiler, who you're going to pay, let me ask you this. How much do you think Peyton wanted to leave Indiana?
Well, he didn't at all. But the salary cap situation was a disaster. Andrew Luck was there. The neck injury, that's a different situation.
Well, you're not going
to franchise Brock Osweiler, right? You're just not. You're not giving that guy $20 million or $18 million a year, which is a situation the Eagles find themselves in with Sam Bradford, which I think a lot of people in Philadelphia will start jumping off the bridge if they do. But coming back to Peyton, this is a legacy game for him.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
and what does he have to do? Okay, let's assume Denver wins, right? Let's assume that Denver wins the whole, kit and caboodle, right? They take the thing down, and it's on the strength of the defense. What are the minimum stats that they have to put up, that Peyton has to put up on offense, for you don't say Peyton screwed up the game? And by the way, I just saw my longtime friend Corey Cronengold has hopped in the room. So if he wants to grab a seat, have him pop in and talk some sports with us, because we're battling injured reserve and we can use a fresh viewpoint. But what kind of numbers does Peyton have to pop up to make this work?
To make it work, I'm telling you now, he's got to put up he's got to throw for at least 275, and he's got to be at least at about 55% completion rate. You can't throw more than one pick, and they got to keep him. They got to keep his jersey clean, and that's
2 scores, 2 touchdowns.
He's going to need at least 2. I'm thinking they're going to need 3 scores. So I'm thinking
Carolina's going to put up at least 30 points, I'm guessing. Well, maybe not on this defense. Maybe 20, 27, 28 points, right? So can the Broncos score 30?
To me, it's the battle of the 2 defenses. So to me, whichever one is going to score over 20 points first is going to be the team that's going to win, in my opinion, which is worth about as much as what's in my hand, which is nothing. I don't see Peyton, considering what we saw of Carolina against Arizona, if they have that same
blew them out of the water.
If they have that same kind of performance and energy level against Denver, now Denver's defense is much better than Arizona's. Well, not much better, but it is better. Peyton and Palmer are very similar. And you saw what the Carolina defense did to Palmer.
Well, and you can rattle them in a big game.
Yes. Well, now the other thing is Palmer still has a good arm. Peyton's arm is nowhere near on par with Palmer's arm right now.
Right. And because of the injuries, for sure.
Yeah. So they were forcing Palmer into bad plays. Now, Peyton's a smarter player in my estimation. So maybe he doesn't get rattled in certain situations, but if he tries to put that ball in a scene where he just has nothing on it anymore, then they're going to eat him up. And I honestly think by halftime, if they're trailing by more than 2 touchdowns, then they got to yank him and put Osweiler in.
No way.
Because
there's no way that happens. It just doesn't happen. But here's one thing that I think not enough people are talking about, right? When you're talking about the Carolina defense, which is fast, they covered a sideline to sideline. They got great corners. I think Josh Norman is going to be the next superstar in the league. The issue they have is that Thomas Davis is now playing, if he plays, and he says he's going to play, but he's playing one-handed, right?
Yeah.
So he's not going to intercept the ball. He may not even be able to make the tackle. And that's part of the issue is now Peyton has a soft middle, even with Kuechly and with that great, the defense, the pass rush. Peyton has a spot on the field now that they can hit slants, quick hooks. He doesn't have to throw necessarily outside, which is good because he doesn't have the arm for it.
So you don't think Carolina is going to kind of plan for that? If they don't think Davis is going to be at least 90%, which I don't think he will be, I think they've got a game plan for Peyton to try to pick on wherever he is. So I've got to think that they're going to have a contingency plan as far as running some type of zone or coverage zone that's going to help him out just a bit. The other thing is when you've got a guy that's coming off of an injury like this, and Thomas, he's one of the heart and soul members on that team.
Right.
So even though he's not necessarily giving you all the stats out there, his heart and soul and his presence is going to be golden for them. So I think that's going to make a difference.
Well, it's going to have to be his heart and soul because he's got about 907 pins in his arms and about 16 plates. They're basically holding that thing together with duct tape and a prayer. So from that standpoint, you're in a situation where you will be able to pick on Thomas Davis, which is something you almost never hear. J.J. Watt came back with a broken hand. You had JPP come back with a broken hand, and missing some digits. But you just can't play the same level when you're playing one arm, no matter how good you are, and especially a guy who's older. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing as to what they do there. Now, I do want to flip the tables a little bit and go back to Cam Newton because we're going to run a short show here today. As I mentioned, that we've got both Brandon and I are basically playing on the DL, and so we're playing hurt, which is good and bad at the same time, depending on your viewpoint. But so Cam Newton, it's the Russell Wilson situation, right? Of the great young quarterbacks, Andrew Luck has taken himself out of the conversation momentarily. I think he's certainly coming back. Andy Dalton has proven you can't rely on him. So you really have in that next generation of great quarterbacks, Kaepernick's out, and there's really nobody else. Tannehill never did anything. It's Cam Newton and Russell Wilson. Now, Russ has been to 2 Super Bowls and within one play of winning 2 titles, right? One questionable running play. If Cam Newton wins this game and they absolutely wallop this defense, and this Denver defense is the best in the league, it's smart, it's quick, it's fast, it can cover, and the pass rush is insane. Where does that rank Cam, A, in relation to Russell Wilson, and B, in relation to the young quarterbacks that the game has right now?
Got to catapult him to the top. It has to.
Above Russ Wilson.
Oh, yeah. And if you're asking me if I'm a GM of a team and I've got to choose between these 2 guys, which one am I going to start my team with? I'm taking Cam Newton first and second every time.
Because not even thinking twice about it.
No. And I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
6'5", 250 don't lie. Not when you can – dude, really think about this. By comparison, you can find another guy like Russell Wilson. You can find a guy that's going to be taller that may have the intangibles. Maybe he doesn't have the speed and to me, Russell Wilson doesn't have world-class speed. He's just a very savvy young player that's smart, that plays within himself. To me, if Drew Brees was more mobile, that's what Russell Wilson would be.
Okay.
Cam Newton, on the other hand, is something we haven't seen because Cam Newton is like having Ben Roethlisberger and Michael Vick in one guy. Because you drop everybody back, okay, he's going to run on you. And he's big enough to take your linebackers on. Sure. All your defensive backs are scared because they can't bring the guy down. The guy's he's shown that he's improved his arm. He's improved his accuracy in the pocket. And let's look at something else. How many great receivers does he have?
Well, it's interesting you brought that up because when Ted Ginn is really your best option, and Ted Ginn, I mean, that guy's hands are awful. Fast, you can't catch. And by the way, this is going to be interesting because Ted Ginn can't catch on the road. I don't know what the deal is when he's traveling. It's almost like he gets into an opposing stadium and the ball becomes smaller and his hands become looser and he can't catch when he's not in Carolina.
Well, I think I know what it is. You have to find all the local dancing establishments, and he might be making it rain.
So you got to give Cam credit for that, right? He's doing this with no receiving core, good running back core, good offensive line, no receivers. Kelvin Benjamin was a huge loss. Funchess has never really shown up. He's gotten better as the year goes on. But
Olsen is looking great.
Olsen is great. What a terrible deal by Chicago that was, by the way. Yes, let's trade our best receiver because our coach doesn't know how to adapt to a scheme. Good idea. But so the question becomes even more so. If Cam Newton goes for, let's say, 3.25, 2 passing touchdowns, running touchdown, and leads a drive 80-something yards, and Stewart runs it in. MVP, without a doubt. Mm-hmm. But are we talking the league's next superstar? Is this the guy now that everybody compares to?
Yes. I think he's already there, to tell you the truth. The only thing he's missing is the title. And this was his coming out year. Think about this. Cam Newton has won at every single level. He would be one of the – I think there's only one other quarterback in NFL history that aside from Cam, if he were to win the Super Bowl and if he won the Super Bowl MVP, that has won every single level. We're talking about high school championship, college championship, college NCAA, also a junior college championship, the Heisman. He's going to win the MVP if he wins a Super Bowl and he wins a Super Bowl MVP. Like, that's a very impressive resume for a kid that's not even 30.
Dare I say the Jason Varitek of football?
Yeah. That's damn impressive.
That's a hell of a resume.
I mean, how many other? And the kid's not 30 years old yet. The guy's built like a cyborg. He's been fairly healthy considering the style of
Yep.
play that they use. He stayed healthy. Remember a year ago, this guy was in a truck accident where his truck flipped over and he walked away. I mean, this guy is a
specimen. Said, because that's one of the things their offensive coordinator was talking about, Shula. He said they're not scared to have him run in the open field because he's bigger than everybody tackling him. This isn't a situation of Randall Cunningham, a Michael Vick, a Russ Wilson, where these guys are normal size, and if they get teed up, you may lose him for a month or 2 months. You hit Cam, you're going to bounce off him. He's going to get up and dance. And by the way, next week we will be talking about the dancing and the racism aspect. And Brandon and I both agree there is some racism there, and we both actually do love the dancing. So it won't be much of a debate; it's more of a discussion. And I do think that there needs to be credit for the fact that the coaching staff said, this is the weapon we have. Let's not build a system that we want to play. Let's make sure we build a system that highlights everything he does really well. And they've done that to get to the Super Bowl. And by the way, they win this thing. This is an 18-1 Super Bowl champion, right? This is, you got to talk about the 85 Bears. You got to talk about the 81 Redskins. You got to talk about some of the great teams in history. Look, obviously had the Patriots been able to beat the Giants, that would have been a whole different situation. We'd be discussing that right now. But as far as 18-1 and Cam Newton leading this Ron Rivera team, by the way, Rivera gets extra props if that happens for being the only people doing, 18-1 twice, or the only person doing 18-1 twice.
And doing AARP commercials.
But you can't, even if they win, and we'll even talk about this next week, I think you can't put them in the discussion of the great teams of all time, right? They just don't have the firepower. They don't have the stardom. They don't have the dominance. They're good. They're very, very good. They're a elite team. They are not in that conversation of, okay, here are the 3 or 4 best teams of all time. Now,
well, is that because we're playing in an era of a watered down league? Because I think the game is a little watered down nowadays, especially with all the different rules. Nobody even knows what a catch is anymore. Right. So that changes things up, especially when you're talking greatest teams of different eras. I think they are a great team, and I agree. It would be hard to put them, especially with the 85 Bears. My goodness.
Right, and USA Today came out this week and ranked the 81 Redskins as the best team in Super Bowl champion in history. And when you look at their breakdown, it's tough to argue. I mean, that team was just insane. Defense, offense, that offensive line. Their quarterback was sacked 4 times. Not in the Super Bowl, 4 times. In the season. In the season.
Yeah, tell that to Tom Brady.
That's crazy. I'm sorry. I think I said 81 Redskins. I think it was 91 Redskins. I'll double check that. Yeah, 91 Redskins. Sorry, they're 14-2 in the regular season, won the Super Bowl, and in those questionable 2 losses, both of them could have gone late the other way. So they didn't get blown out at all. Now look, Cam and the Panthers do deserve a lot of credit as we talk here on our Fanzeal Super Bowl preview, and that's Brandon Boykin. I'm Justin Simon. We are going to be here most of next week every night, so make sure you hop on in and throw us your questions on Twitter at Fanzeal or check us out on our YouTube page at Fanzeal Sports. But let's say that Cam somehow, with no receivers and with, I would call it an above average but not exceptional running game, decimates somehow this top-ranked Denver defense. I mean, absolutely destroys them. And they win this thing 42-17, something on those lines. What does that do for a legacy?
It puts another major black eye. Well, I won't say a black eye. It puts a major hiccup on his legacy. Because this is twice. Your last 2 times in the Super Bowl, you've gotten waxed.
Yep.
And it's how much of it is beyond your control, how much of it is within your control.
Well, that's true. I mean, is the loss due to interceptions, loss due to turnovers, or did Cam and just throttle the defense? That's going to be the most interesting thing I think of this, right? 2 weeks from now, let's say that Manning loses. So now you got a guy with a Super Bowl title, a handful of MVP awards, number 1 pick, almost all relevant passing records, or if not the ownership of them in the top 3 or 4. And this guy's generally considered not a big winner, right?
Yeah.
He'd have 3 Super Bowl losses. He'd have 9 one-and-dones. The only guy he seems to be able to beat with any consistency, and I know that New England people aren't going to like this, are the Patriots deep in the playoffs. This is going to be a tough thing for him. Now, obviously, he's got more money in the bank than he'll ever need. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He'll be wearing the jacket in Canton, so it's not a big deal. This is more radio talk show fodder. But if Peyton Manning goes 2-3 interceptions or 2 interceptions and a fumble, or just gets stopped all day long, he gets bumped down the list. I mean, you might have to take him out of the top 7 or 8 quarterbacks of all time at that point, because then he's just a numbers guy.
Yeah. To me, if he doesn't at least have a good showing in this, and I don't know what your list is. That's one thing we've never discussed, our list of top 10 quarterbacks.
We'll do that next week. We'll get our list ready to go for the week leading into Super Bowl, and we'll debate that. But you're right. This is going to be questionable.
I mean, I being the 49er homer that I am, Steve Young was a great quarterback, and he's a great all-time quarterback, but he's not the best. But he's definitely in the top 10 for me. And I would put Steve Young above him right about this point, because Steve Young was still impressive even as he got older. It's sad because you don't want to be a victim of the now, of the moment, and forget all the greatness that came before this. You don't want to forget who he is. It's he's still that guy. You just kind of got to squint to see if that's Peyton. It doesn't, you can't keep your eyes wide open the whole time and see him there. But if you squint sometimes, every now and then he'll make a play, and you say, "Oh yeah, forget it. That guy's really pretty good." So he's got his hands full. I think what's really gonna be the difference is gonna be which defense asserts themselves the most. Who's the alpha male? Because somebody's getting punched in the mouth, and somebody's gonna tuck their tail, and somebody's gonna stand over the other. Yeah, so we got to see.
I think it comes down to, is it Kuechly or is it Von Miller, right? If one of those two guys takes over the game, that could actually be more important than the quarterback situation. Well, it could be Josh Norman, right? If Josh Norman shuts down any possibility of any throws that Peyton's trying to make, it's going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be a very good game, and you don't always know what you're getting in the Super Bowl. But look, that was a very good Patriots team, a banged-up Patriots team. But Denver got after them, and that pass rush. And I know Cam can elude the rush. I know Cam is a stronger guy, and it's tougher to get him down than it is Brady, and that they've got a slightly better offensive line, at least certainly a healthier offensive line. But that is no easy task for Denver. And I think as my voice starts to go here in the final couple minutes of our show, I think it's going to be, this could be one of those things where you end up with that 30-27 game or a 14-10 game.
Yeah. The biggest difference, and I mean, there's obviously a lot of differences between Carolina and New England as far as in style of play, quarterbacks, whatsoever. But the biggest difference is that Carolina, you have to respect their run game. And Denver did not respect New England's attempt at having a running game. Anytime Tom Brady is your leading rusher in the fourth quarter of a game, then you have no shot. Dude, you and I could have gotten there and got 13 yards. And you and I could have gotten there.
You've seen me run. I could not have gotten 13 yards. You could have. You're a big guy and you got speed.
You run better than Brady.
Well, I could have gotten 13 yards if I went backwards.
But we also could have probably protected Brady better than what it looked like was getting done, because whoever was playing on the left side, it's like, dude, he didn't even ask the dude for a ticket. He was just letting the guy go by him. He didn't sniff his cologne. He didn't slap at him. He didn't even get the number of the train. And Terrific Tom's got to be getting up and pulling on his Uggs and saying, "Yo, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you guys got to give me some kind of help." Cam's not going to have that problem, because those guys can't sit there with their ears pinned back, all waiting to rush in, because Stewart's going to come in and he can pop you, and he can run it up the gut. He can bounce to the outside. Like you said, Cam's big enough. And Cam's big enough, he can light some of those D-backs up. If they try to blitz one of those guys.
They may not have names, but they've got speed. Ginn Brown, Those guys,
Yes.
they'll run read options coming off the receiver. They'll run reverses. So they'll do everything they got to do to keep that rush, from closing in too quick. It's going to be a very interesting game. We've got, just over 9 days till the game, or I guess technically 8 days. We are really looking forward to it. We love this time of year. That's Brandon Boykin. I'm Justin Simon. Check us out all week next week. We will get our schedule up on Twitter. But we look forward to having all kinds of discussions about what's going on with the game. And hopefully by Monday, both of us will be better. We'll put in the full hour, and we'll talk a little more about that. Certainly, we are going to want to next week bring up a little bit about what happens this weekend's NHL All-Star Game, some Major League Baseball signings that are of interest. And congratulations, I think, before we leave, to the great Vin Scully. The Los Angeles City Council today has announced they will name a street leading into Dodger Stadium after the man. What took so long, I don't know. He's only been at the mic 60-something years, but better late than never before his last season. So a lot of football to be talked about. We're going to see what is said in our media day. I can't wait to discuss the dumbest questions that are asked at media day, because the dumbest, stupidest, most moronic stuff. I have been on that field and had that moment of, what did you just ask? And those will certainly be highlighted. But we'll be back in the studio a couple days next week, and we'll be doing a couple of these from home as well. So check us out at Fanzeal, and make sure you go to fanzeal.com, sign up for the website, and sign up for the funniest website in sports, or the funniest newsletter in sports. Comes out every Monday morning, and get a chance to ask your favorite athletes any questions you want and get answers from them. So thanks for checking us out on this Friday night, and we will see you all next week.